Okay, hi everybody, it's me. Now hopefully you can see me on this video. I'm not entirely sure you can. You can see that I'm also using a mobile phone just in case everything does really go very, very wrong. Now, I'm going to stop that one, put that down for the minute. So, I know you're all really desperately missing your art classes, aren't you? Yes, of course you are. So, with the help of ACL, we are hoping to deliver these by video on hopefully YouTube would be easier. The file sizes for these videos are going to be huge, I'm afraid, so we can't email them, which is what I was hoping to do. So please bear with me. Somehow we will get round this. Now, one of the media that we were supposed to be doing with one of the classes, Thursdays I believe, was pastels. So I thought we'd start there and then work through to the others. So we're going to have a look at pastels. Now you can see I've got this lovely brown paper here. Now this is actually a pastel paper. So the pastel paper itself has a wonderful tooth. It actually grabs onto the pigment. The pigment is dry, it's fine filament that needs something very toothy to keep it on there. This is why cartridge paper will not do. It doesn't have that kind of tooth that will keep that pastel on there. So, I know most of you have this kind of Faber-Castell set, so we're going to work with this kind of small set, okay, which got enough colours for just about everything. I'm also going to introduce you to the pencils. So these are pastel pencils. You do not have to have these, by the way. It's not imperative that you have any. I can show you some tricks with other things that you can use when you don't have the pencils. They're just very handy for fine detail. Okay, so we can use those later. In the picture I sent you, you'll notice there are a few other little elements, one of which was this Sansador. Again, you do not need Sansador, it was just a small enough bottle for me to photograph. So this is a low odour thinner. This can be used with the pastel, the soft pastel. So again, if you don't have the pencils, this is what we can employ to actually get some fine lines, okay? It's not imperative that you have it though. Little silver tin. This tin actually contains dried rice. Now that rice we will be using only, so if you watch this, this is just a piece of dirty pastel. That literally is for cleaning your pastels. You need to do it a little bit longer than that, but you get the idea. It will clean your pastels by giving it a shake. It needs to be dry. The other thing in there you'll see is one of these lovely old-fashioned sharpeners. They literally are, in my opinion, the only thing worthy of sharpening those pastel pencils to a beautiful point. Again, in the future, I would invest in one of these. They give you a very long point that lasts a lot longer, but a very sharp point at that. Okay? So, what I want to start with is obviously a background. I'm not going to tell you what we're doing just yet, but for now, let's just get some colour going. So, while I'm doing this, you can actually see the tooth of the paper coming through. Okay, I'm not honestly thinking too much along the lines of what colours I'm using, they're just there. They're just a lot lighter than my background. So now can you see all that dust? You are going to be breathing that in. So if you do have asthma or any lung problems, please wear a mask. You do not want a persistent cough, at least not in this day and age. So, I'm using colours that are a variation on a theme, really. And I'm about to swap that up a little bit. There you go. So, something bright, you know, Kate always puts something bright in there somewhere. The difference is understanding what happens when these two meet. So I would call that a teal colour, maybe turquoisey colour. But look what happens when the pink reaches it. You get this beautiful purple colour. So when these colours do finally come together, you get extra variations within them. So let's find something more luminous, shall we? Again, I'm not really worried about what the subject matter is going to be. I just want to get some nice colours on here. I want to get some variations so that when I go into a background, all of these will show through. Now what I wouldn't do is put any dark colours on the background. Leave them till last. Some of them can be removed really, really easily, but some of them can't. And obviously we haven't done a drawing, we haven't mapped out our composition yet. So we are just literally creating a new background, because I don't really like the colour of the paper, but it's all we have, because I'm not allowed out. We can start to fill in this tooth. So you can see the little grainy holes here. As I go to rub it in, they're starting to fill in. So that means that I can get another couple of layers of pastel on here, and that means that I can actually work for a lot longer. Okay, so let's get some more on. Well, let's try violet, shall we? See what we get. I quite like the olive greens as well, so I'm going to put some of the colours I like. And there's no reason why you should have a background that reflects whatever your chosen subject will be. I always put a nice leery background in, as you well know. And this stops me from being trapped within that picture. So I can play around just with a lot of colour, and then I can put the subject matter on the top. So these colours are changing as I go. Hi everybody, and welcome back to part 2. So onto this background, you can see I'm now going to blend just a little bit, and this is light blending. I don't want to over blend so that I end up with a big mushy mess. So little circles. If I go in a little bit closer, you can see I'm trying to actually get into that weave, take away some of those little dots that you can see. So again, I want to keep some of those colours quite fresh. So little circles, all the way, little circles. So keep doing this until you've got a reasonable blend and we've got less loose pastel. Okay. Now some of this background will show through on my subject matter, which I will show you in a minute. But for now, I just want to get a rough background on. Okay, so that's probably enough blending for now. So I've chosen, I'm going to use my putty rubber. So again, remember what I said, you need this warm, you need to manipulate this, keep it warm all of the time while you're using a putty rubber. Now what interested me particularly, let me go back to that, was actually the negative spaces within the handlebar and the light. So I'm going to try and map out, if I can come back and stretch my arm far enough, that is, just to find the basic shape that I want. So I'm going to move this over, I'm going to have this all over to one side. So you can see you've got the ability to put a very light drawing down just by using this rubber. I know I didn't put the background all the way in, but you will be. So if you make a mistake and you don't like it, it really is just a wiggle of the finger. You don't need to go mad. It's just such a light way of doing anything. And you can apply this to charcoal, chalk if you use chalk. And this will actually be able to blend in quite nicely to whatever you're doing. Now, as you can tell, I'm not used to talking to the camera. I'm used to having you all shouting out at me. So I'm going to end up blethering over the top of this. So we're just sculpting out the main details, literally main ones. I don't need any other things, just the initial structure going in. Now you might not be able to see that very well. If I go in, you might be able to see some of the lines. So these are approximations. They are not exact by any means, but that's good enough for the minute, because once I start to put on heavier pastels, I can then adjust to what I want. So that's going to be my next trick, if I can find. So I'm going to map out, actually I want this over a little bit more, so I'm actually going to bring this over a little bit more than I've actually put it in. So again, I'm going to map rough. The beauty obviously of pastels is it just, if you don't like it, you blend it in. So I'm not honestly worried about any mistakes that I'm going to make right now, as long as I have an approximate place for everything. Now unfortunately with this holding the camera, I cannot get far enough away from this for you to actually see as you would in a class, so bear with me please. So rough sketch is good enough. Right, so I'm going to move that over from there, move it over slightly, put that to there. Now, as this is a kind of a rusty old abandoned scooter, I'm going to use this red as a slight undercoat for some of those areas that are rusty. Now I have to keep turning my iPad back on because it keeps going off, so if you're wondering where the camera's moving to, that's where it's going. So again, I'm going to put some of this rusty stuff down. Okay, so I've started mapping out larger areas. So I've actually made this just a fraction bigger than I started with as well. So I need to fill this paper up a little bit more. Now remember what I said, if you have any breathing problems, please wear a mask. Okay, so we have nearly got our composition. Now obviously you don't have to do a Vespa, you could do anything metal, and you don't have to do anything old either. So you could have nice and shiny, brand new. We did say motorcycles, motor cars. That doesn't exclude kettles. Kettles come under a similar band, even though they're not functional as a vehicle. But consider the fact that they are, some of them enamel, some of them just stainless steel. They all have similar properties. I've chosen this obviously because I like the old and the battered, flecks of paint, etc. You choose whatever you want. If you want this one, I will email it to you. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the fact that that fills my paper, and I've got enough of the negative spaces that I actually liked in the first place. So from here I want to go on and start putting in just some of the paint colour that I want to keep. So going into the background, again I'm using my pastels on the side. I don't want to start gouging the paper at this early stage. I want to be able to keep the pastel on there. So I'm going to just work at keeping the pastel moving with some of the colours that I've already actually got down there. So now, even though I've got a very coloured background on here, this does not stop me, especially with pastels, putting on very realistic layers. If you are inclined to go for the very realistic approach, then pastel will allow you to actually put multiple layers on. You just need to slow down a little bit to do that. So although I've blended my first layer, it does not mean that I will go back and start fiddling around and doing multiple blends. There's not much point constantly blending because you'll lose texture after a while. So if I do this again, you'll see I'll start to lose definition, everything will start to look cloudy, misty, which is probably not a great idea. Okay. Now I'm just going to keep changing my colours and start building into the areas that I want to bring out. So these are little rusty areas to start with. So the other thing also is you want to start with your mid-tones, moving towards your darks and then finishing with your lights. Okay, when I say lights, anything that's white, try and reserve till last. But for now, work towards your darks. Doesn't mean rush at them, but work towards them. So I'm just going to try and work this corner, so I'm building up layers, and you'll notice I'm not blending. You don't need to keep blending. So in with a darker charcoal colour. Now obviously I can't lean on my work at the moment, I'm having to do this a fair distance away from it. That doesn't mean that you can't put a piece of paper over this and work across it. So we're starting to build this fender. So do this in small sections, a little bit at a time. So you're going to stick with your big soft pastels for as long as you possibly can, and then move to the smaller pencils. However, right at this minute, where's my grey gone? There, light grey. I'm going to blend by going one on top of another. So the actual movement of putting this on, as you can see, does the blending for you. You don't need to rub this, so don't rub. The secret is actually being able to build up these layers and create softer transitions by manipulating the pastel as you're putting it on. So we're starting to get some areas whereby they're blending together themselves and giving me this battered old paintwork. So I'm going to go backwards and forwards between all the colours. Now, due to the nature of what I'm actually painting, these little spots that you can see showing through aren't going to be too much of a problem. However, if you were doing, I guess, maybe even skin, you'd probably want to get rid of some of those little marks there. Now, one way of doing it is to actually use a brush to remove the excess, but you can see that really in this particular case isn't going to work. It's not something that's a really good idea, and it's not something I use very often. You can see it actually removes far too much pigment and we end up having to put it all back on again. So I generally don't spend too much time blending. I'd rather use pastels one on top of the other and agitate the pastel itself rather than constant blending. This way you'll still get nice fresh colours, they'll still blend and won't look really smoky. So that's one on top of the other. And you can get some very, very realistic, true to life colours from doing this. You've just got to be a little bit more patient and understand a little bit more about your colour theory. So if I step back, it's starting to look less blended. So I'm going to change up the colour a little bit now on top of. So you can see this is quite a deep green, greeny teal colour. But over the grey, that's not what it's going to give me. So I can agitate the two together and they will start to create another tone for me. Okay, so I want to leave some of that red showing through as well. It's obviously rusty, so I don't want to completely obliterate everything that I've got there. So I'm actually going to bring some of that red back through into here, into this green, so it looks old. And again, remember what I'm doing. I'm actually just using the pastels themselves sideways on to agitate the layers together without making them messy. So here we go, back with the green again. So you'll see they're starting to blend quite nicely. Now, if you really do think that some of it needs to be a bit blurry, you can tap it in, but please don't go mad with the blending. We need to keep away from the blending. It's fine doing your first layer, but subsequent layers will actually stop you from getting your final layer on. All it will do is sit on the surface, block a lot of that furry feeling that you get from this paper, leaving you with no way of keeping it on there. Not what we want. So we're going to stop adding too much. Okay, I'm just going to check my reference photo because I haven't been actually looking at it. Take a stand back, and I've actually got a lot more rust spots to go in, so I'm just going to find a few of those. So I'm using this dark brown to start the base of the rust. Actually, some of these is back down to bare metal, but I don't want to immediately jump to black, okay, because black's quite hard to get off. If you start rubbing around with the black, everything will turn very strange colours that you can't do anything with, and it will be start again. So I avoid using the black until the last knockings, as it were. Now, I'm going to change the shape of this, so putty rubber, turn the putty rubber, so again, looks a bit of a mess. I'm not worried. I can just give that a little bit of a push down. I can then go back again with some of the original colours we put down, not that I can remember what they are. Olive, wasn't it? Olive. Bring that back in and readjust. So let's have some light blue in there. That'll blend the two together. So as that was background, I'm just going to blur that out a little bit. So as you can see, very easy to correct any mistakes. Now, I'm going to do this curve. I'm going to go back in, put some of this rusty colour in. So you really don't have to worry about your mistakes, but you must remember to keep standing back to see where things need to be changed. Now again, we can subtract part of the subject if you make a mess by going back into the background, if it really does come to that. In the meantime, try and just use your pastels one on top of the other, okay? So you'll see once you get to what is effectively a final layer, the pastels have the ability to become very, very bright. Now, if I go in quite close here, you'll see that we now have no holes. We've still got some here, but we don't have any here. So that's me subtracting the background so that I have my corrections done. So by using this pastel on the edge, I will actually start to reclaim the surface. I can put quite a big delivery, this is like putting paint on, onto the surface. As you can see, it literally will cover absolutely everything once you start using it on its side, on the edge. And I'm just going to blur that in to get a green. So you can optically mix with these. So again, remember your colours, what's going to mix with what, or what shouldn't be mixed with what. Okay, where's my reference photo gone? Okay, now so I'm just putting some of these lighter blues on. No, it's not actually this light blue colour, it's more of a teal colour that I'm looking for, so I'm going to have to again work between a few colours, layering them up in order to get what I want. So you're optically mixing all of the time with these. So I'm going to go over that brown that I originally put down with this. It's like a greeny blue. They do all have names and numbers. I just can't remember them all because they're not the same as your paint colours. But as you can see, it starts to change the colour once you go one over the other. quite unexpectedly, you get this charcoal colour. So if I just blur that down a little bit, you'll see what I mean. So as you can see, that colour over that rusty burnt sienna-ish colour has given me this grey. So I'm just finding some paint spots. Before I go into some rust spots. I'm just going around the rusty edges with multiple layers of pastel, trying to create some of the colouring that I want for the paint chips. So the other thing to note is that you're still not looking for mountains of detail. You still want to be blocking in areas of lights and darks, of colour, rather than actually going straight to detail. So try and avoid as much detail as possible at this stage. We really do need to get as much of the paint on as possible. Okay, I'm going to stop the video there for the moment, and I'll be back with part 3. Okay, welcome back to part 3. I'm afraid I'm having to do these videos in kind of half-hour sections, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to string them together, but that might not be the case. I apologise for all the noise you can hear in the background. That is actually my neighbour. So I'm going to try and create some more texture more than actual detail here with the pastels. And again, I'm keeping with the same kind of motion, trying to just lay on some of the pigment so that I can get some really good colour. And again, if you want to tap a few little areas, then please do, but please don't go mad with it. You really want to keep that to a minimum, so that we can actually create much more depth within our paintings. So I've just changed, this is charcoal colour, so I'm just going to get a little bit of definition in here, put a few streaks in where I can see some of the marks that have been lost from the paint. Okay. So this is me starting to really establish some of those dark areas I was talking about earlier. I just need to check one of my lines, as I'm not sure. No, it is right. I wasn't sure that was, but they are. So that means I can continue just Getting a few of those dark areas in. So I'm sticking with the charcoal colour for now. I know I can remove this one. Black, not quite so much, which is why I'm not rushing to actually get the black out. So I know that I can also manipulate the charcoal by putting other colours over the top to get a darker colour from whatever I put over the top. So again, choose your colours carefully. Don't just rush at what you see as a top colour. Try and build them from some of the colour theory that you know. Don't forget, we're using a small set of pastels, so therefore we don't have all of those colours available to us. So we do have to literally mix this by hand. Okay, so that is a dark patch as well. So okay. So once I've established this pattern of dark, I can then go back and now try to fill in all the areas that I think can do with some extra colour before I start the top coat. Now you notice again I haven't rubbed that in. I'm trying to avoid rubbing in too much. Trying to remove it with a rubber can be quite hard if you've already started to really rub in. So again, I try and avoid this rubbing in issue as much as is possible. And don't forget to stand back. Stand back, have a good look at what you've got as a composition. Does it need to change? Because now would be the time to actually figure that out. If anything needs to change, just do it. Don't worry about, oh, I really like that bit, or I did that bit really well. Just remove it. Pastels are very easy, and as you can see, really quick to work up. Okay, I'm going to go back in with a bit more colour. So I'm flipping between greens and blues here, just to get something a little bit closer. Obviously, if we had the big unison sets or Rembrandt sets, etc., you'd have a great many colours that you could get very close to without having to mix. Okay, welcome back to part 3. Now I'm going to go up to here, which is where the light is, and I want to just again block in just like I have with the other things, using fairly neutral tones to get my shapes. And what I want to do then is to then bring out some of the detail. As it was the area of interest that interested me particularly, I feel that I'll start there and start bringing that out. So I'm putting a neutral start to this down. So this is a grey, but a French grey. And as I have no undercoat underneath there, I'm just going to give this a quick blur in just to get rid of some of those pokey holes. I'm going to change that up to slightly darker grey there. And again, I'll just do the same just to get rid of this brown under there. So again, we're just looking at average tones to get us started. Okay, so most of my little pokey holes, they're all gone. So now I can start building the actual shape that I'm looking for this housing of the light. So remember, I'm not going to jump to any white spaces just yet. I just want to get an idea of where everything is going. So this is chrome, which is why I'm using the greys to start me off. And remember what we said, any corrections, do them now. Don't wait until later, do them now. Anything that looks wrong, get rid of. Now obviously the idea of being able to do videos for you instead of in your class is that you'll be able to pause this and catch up instead of telling me to wait for you. Okay, so just getting some of those midder light tones in. Reshape that a bit. And again, I'm still not really going for detail. I'm just trying to get the areas of tone mapped in. Again, more often so we don't lose them. As with all chrome and shiny metal, it's going to reflect a lot of other things. So I'm going to be getting some other colours coming through here. Some of which will be that blue from underneath, so a little bit of that is going in. Okay, a little bit of a darker charcoal colour. Again, just to establish where my dark actually is. So this is not as dark as I can go yet. This is dark, but it's not as dark as I will actually need it in the end. So the charcoal's quite a, I say charcoal, it's a charcoal looking colour. It's not actual charcoal. So again, it's quite surprising just how much you can achieve just with these sticks, which have got quite a broad delivery. Okay, so that was a bit we were removing. So let's remove it. And don't forget to keep stepping back from your work, really important, just so you can see how some of the shapes are actually appearing. Okay, so pretty much got enough. I'm just going to put a little bit of a lighter grey on, if I can get it out of the box. Start giving me the shape that I want for the glass. Okay, so again, I've got a fair covering down there that I can use now to start building my light on. So with that, I'm actually going to introduce the pencils. So I know a few of you have pencils. These just make life a little bit easier when it comes to creating shapes. So again, you can see these go on really quite easily. You're going to use these exactly as you would your normal pencil. That's too light. Let's change it. So wherever my darks are, as you know, I normally put a blue down before, just to create an even deeper, richer dark. So that's what I'm doing now. This is an indigo that's going to be the base for a dark. Just Continued that a little bit too far. So as you can see, I put the dark on over the top of the blue. It's a much richer finish to it. Now generally when I'm doing pastels, you normally have to go back over the darks at the very end just to touch them up, basically, to keep that fresh dark feel to it. And if you're wondering whether you can actually add charcoal to pastels, you can, but just be aware that it's actually lighter than your darkest pastel. Okay. So the idea would be now that you will pause this video and you catch up. So what I'm going to do is to pause the video, continue working a little bit, and then come back to you with whatever my next step is going to be. Okay, now that I'm back, you'll probably notice I've made an alteration here. I realised my elliptical shape wasn't quite right, so put a putty rubber over it, got rid of the excess, and started again. It really is that simple. Don't like something, got something wrong, literally go back, take it off, redo it. We were talking about adding the pencils in. Now, if you do not have the pencils, I want to show you something. So, this is my rigger. I have a small pot of white spirit, which in this case was low odour spirit. And I'm just going to dip my brush into that so it's wet. Pick up some of the pigment that I want. And if you just use your smallest brush, I tend to use a rigger because you can get nice long thinner lines. You can start to create very fine lines without the need for a pencil. Now the only thing with this is it does not budge. Once it's there for good. So no mistakes. Hence the reason I wouldn't rush to do this at this stage. Any mistakes I can get off now, but if I start putting white spirit, turpentine or any form of oil with the pastels, there's no way that I'm getting rid of this. So don't be in a rush to do this. Okay, so that's one way of getting very fine lines. I'm just going to pour that back in the bottle before I have an accident.